Our planet hides the fingerprints of giants. Deep beneath the soil and carved into mountain ranges lie the ghosts of mega projects, colossal human endeavors that permanently reshaped the world and then vanished from memory. We are uncovering 25 of these long-forgotten wonders, from a desert transformed by an underground river to a city built entirely within a cliff. This journey will give you a new understanding of how human ambition has literally moved mountains. We will discover why a civilization that hollowed out an entire mountain for a temple simply walked away, and how a network of roads longer than the Earth's circumference was lost for centuries. What forgotten legacy from the ancient world do you think still influences us today? Hidden beneath the deserts of the Middle East runs a ghost river, a stone vein carved by human hands. This is the Kanatferon, or the Pharaoh's Canal, an underground aqueduct of almost unimaginable scale. For over 100 kilometers, Roman engineers directed the flow of water from mountain springs through deep tunnels, across vast arid plains to thirsty cities. They achieved this with simple iron tools and brute human labor, chiseling through solid limestone to create a hidden highway for life itself. The true marvel was its gradient. The aqueduct needed to descend at a slope so gentle that the water would not rush and erode the channel, yet not so flat that it would stagnate. Without lasers or advanced levels, they calculated a drop of just a few centimeters for every kilometer. This precision, maintained through the dark, twisting tunnels, allowed a steady, reliable flow for hundreds of years. Maintenance shafts were dug from the surface down to the tunnel at regular intervals. These provided air for the workers and allowed for the removal of debris, a simple yet brilliant feature that made the entire system sustainable. For centuries, this hidden artery turned barren land green, supporting agriculture and vibrant communities. But when the empire receded and maintenance ceased, the tunnels slowly filled with silt and rock. The water stopped and the desert began to reclaim its territory. The very land that had blossomed reverted to dust, a stark lesson in how fragile civilization can be when its foundational works are forgotten. Why would a society abandon something so vital to its survival? The answers are lost to time, perhaps war, economic collapse, or simply a slow forgetting of the knowledge needed to maintain the miracle beneath their feet. Its silent tunnels now stand as a reminder that our greatest creations require not just ambition to build, but constant vigilance to preserve. From this forgotten river in the rock, our journey takes us to a place of even grander ambition, where an entire civilization poured its faith into moving a mountain. That same spiritual drive to reshape the world would find one of its most perfect expressions not in a hidden river, but on an open hilltop in India. The great Stupa of Sanchi began not as a building, but as a hill itself. An entire mound of earth and rock was methodically carved and sculpted by thousands of workers over generations into a perfect hemispherical dome, a solid form meant to represent the entire Buddhist cosmos. This was not a structure placed upon the land, it was the land itself transformed into a sacred symbol. At its heart were enshrined relics of the Buddha, making the very earth a vessel for the divine. The scale of labor is almost beyond comprehension, with entire communities devoting their lives to a project they would never see completed, motivated purely by faith. The stupa's grandeur was amplified by its 4 magnificent gateways known as toranas. These were not mere entrances, but towering works of art, every inch covered in intricate carvings that narrated the life of the Buddha and his previous incarnations. Scenes of elephants, lions, and celestial maidens intertwined with stories of enlightenment, blending nature, mythology, and profound teaching into a single, cohesive whole. It became a magnetic pilgrimage site, drawing devotees from across Asia who walked for months to circle the Great Dome, their footsteps wearing paths into the stone around it. The design itself became a blueprint, influencing the shape of temples and stupas from Sri Lanka to Korea, creating a vast, interconnected cultural landscape defined by a shared spiritual vision. For centuries, the site thrived, a bustling center of faith and learning, but empires shifted, trade routes changed, and the flow of pilgrims slowly dried up. The Great Stupa was not destroyed by conquest or catastrophe. It was simply forgotten. The jungle crept back in, vines and roots weaving through the carved narratives on the Toranas, and the once sacred hill returned to wilderness. It slept for nearly 1,000 years, a ghost of faith reclaimed by nature. Its rediscovery and subsequent restoration in modern times have revived its purpose, not just as a monument, but as a living center for heritage and meditation. This cycle raises a profound question. How does the spiritual ambition that moved a mountain compare to our modern goals of infrastructure and commerce? The preservation of Sanchi speaks to a deep human need to connect with these belief systems that literally shaped our world, reminding us that our landscapes are as much cultural as they are physical. From this serene hilltop symbolizing the cosmos, we descend into the earth, to a city carved not for the heavens, but for survival, hidden from the world for millennia. Deep beneath the fairy tale landscape of Cappadocia, where wind-carved spires dot the surface, lies a world in reverse. The volcanic rock here is soft, and around the 3rd century, people began to carve not just homes, but an entire city descending into the earth. Derinkuyu is a labyrinthine complex of tunnels and chambers reaching 18 stories deep, a self-sufficient fortress capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people for months at a time. This was not a simple cave, but a meticulously planned underground metropolis. Ingenious ventilation shafts, some stretching over 55 meters to the surface, provided a constant supply of fresh air to even the lowest levels. Deep wells tapped into underground water sources, ensuring a supply safe from contamination or siege. The city featured everything a community needed to survive, from stables for livestock and sprawling storage rooms for food to churches for worship and even wineries. Its multi-level structure demonstrated a remarkable degree of social organization, with specific areas designated for living, working, and communal gathering, a testament to a society that planned not just for the present, but for its own long-term preservation. The most brilliant feature was its security. Massive, circular stone doors, each weighing nearly half a ton, could be rolled across key passages from the inside, sealing entire sections of the city from invaders. These stone barriers, balanced perfectly within their grooves, were operated by just 1 or 2 people, creating an impenetrable defense that turned the city into a true sanctuary. For centuries, this hidden world provided refuge from the turmoil above, whether from invading armies, religious persecution, or the harsh realities of surface life. Its very existence is a powerful example of human adaptability, turning a simple geological formation into a shield. Then, for reasons still debated, the city was abandoned. Its corridors fell silent, its chambers were left empty, and knowledge of its existence faded into local legend until a chance discovery in the 1960s brought it back into the light. What does it say about us that when faced with existential threats, our instinct can be to build downward instead of up? Derinkuyu challenges our modern obsession with skylines and towers, reminding us that safety and community have often been found by retreating into the embrace of the earth itself. This profound drive to seek refuge underground speaks to a universal need for security. a theme that connects this ancient sanctuary to our own modern concepts of bunkers and climate shelters. As we surface from this hidden city, we turn to a project of a completely different scale, one that sought not to hide from the world, but to connect its greatest oceans. While the hidden city of Derinkuyu offered sanctuary by turning inward, another civilization achieved its greatness by forging an unprecedented connection across its vast territory. The Grand Canal of China was not merely a waterway, it was a liquid spine that held an empire together. Stretching for over 1,700 kilometers, it linked the mighty Yellow River to the bustling Yangtze, weaving through plains and mountains to create the longest artificial river ever built by human hands. For centuries, this aquatic highway was the lifeblood of imperial China, a continuous flow of barges heavy with grain, salt, and luxurious silks. This constant movement of goods did more than fill treasuries. It unified a sprawling and diverse landscape into a single, functioning economic body. The canal's construction was a saga of human endurance that spanned dynasties. Millions of laborers, conscripted by imperial decree, spent their lives dredging riverbeds and reinforcing muddy banks with stone. They moved earth on a scale that rivaled the formation of natural landscapes, permanently altering the region's hydrology and dictating where great cities would rise. The canal did not just serve existing settlements, it created them. Cities like Hangzhou and Beijing blossomed into powerhouse hubs of commerce and culture precisely because they were nodes on this vast network, their fortunes forever tied to the flow of water and trade. The engineering challenges were monumental. How do you maintain a consistent water level across such immense distances, especially when dealing with unpredictable rivers and varying elevations? Chinese engineers developed sophisticated solutions, including a series of locks and intricate reservoirs to manage flow. They pioneered techniques to combat siltation, the gradual clogging of the channel with sediment, which was a constant threat to the canal's viability. These innovations were triumphs of foresight, a form of civil engineering that would not be out of place in the modern world. Yet, this mega project was not immune to the tides of history. As dynasties fell and priorities shifted, sections of the Grand Waterway were neglected, slowly silting up and returning to nature. But its legacy was already indelible, etched into the very culture and infrastructure policies of modern China. The Grand Canal forces us to ask a critical question of our own time. In an era of climate change and rising sea levels, what can we learn from these ancient, large-scale manipulations of water? This project stands as a timeless monument to the power of connectivity, proving that by redefining how water moves across a continent, we can literally reshape human destiny. From this flowing testament to connection, we now journey to a place of absolute defiance, where a mountain itself was transformed into an impregnable stronghold. High on a monolithic rock in the heart of Sri Lanka, a king sought to build his own heaven on earth. Sigiriya, the Lion Rock, is a 200-meter-high volcanic plug that was transformed in the 5th century into a fortress palace of breathtaking audacity. Its very conception was a statement of absolute power, a declaration that no summit was too high for human ambition. The ascent to the top was an orchestrated experience of awe and intimidation. Visitors would first pass through elaborate water gardens at the base with symmetrical pools, fountains fed by gravitational pressure, and islands, a serene and ordered landscape that contrasted violently with the sheer cliff looming above. Then came the climb up a staircase flanked by a mirror wall so highly polished that the king could see his reflection as he walked. This wall, originally gleaming, was meant to disorient and humble, merging the ruler's image with the vast jungle reflected in its surface. Further up, the path led through a sheltered gallery where vibrant frescoes depicted celestial maidens. their graceful forms and enigmatic smiles a blend of local artistry and influences from ancient trade routes, a silent testament to a kingdom connected to a wider world. The final approach was through the Lion's Gate, a massive brick and plaster construction of a lion's head whose open mouth formed the entrance to the final staircase. Today, only the enormous paws remain, but they hint at the psychological power the complete structure must have wielded, as if visitors were literally entering the belly of a beast to reach the divine. The summit itself was a masterpiece of urban planning, a sprawling palace complex with reservoirs carved directly into the rock to collect rainwater, ensuring the citadel could withstand a prolonged siege. Every aspect of Sigiriya was designed for self-sufficiency and defense, yet it was also imbued with an unparalleled artistic sensibility. This was not merely a fortress, it was a total work of art. Yet, this majestic center had an astonishingly short lifespan. After the king's death, the capital moved and Sigiriya was largely abandoned, becoming a monastery before fading from memory, its gardens swallowed by the jungle. Its isolation speaks volumes about the fragility of power built around a single, towering ego. A fortress, no matter how impregnable, cannot sustain a kingdom if its foundation is the will of one man. Why pour such immense resources into a project that would be abandoned within a generation? The answer may lie in the very nature of ambition itself, a desire to create something so monumental that it would defy time, even if the civilization that built it could not. Sigiriya proves that the most awe-inspiring mega-projects are those that marry raw utility with sublime beauty, leaving behind a puzzle that is as much about art as it is about empire. This human drive to extract and shape the earth leads us from this palace in the sky to a much darker, deeper place, a mountain hollowed out not for glory but for pure, relentless industry. The vibrant, almost alien colors of the Rio Tinto landscape tell a story written in oxidized minerals, a 5,000-year testament to humanity's relentless hunger for what lies beneath. This is not the work of a single empire, but a chain of civilizations from the Iberians and Phoenicians to the Romans, each generation sinking deeper shafts and carving wider pits into the red earth. They were chasing copper for tools, silver for coinage, and gold for treasure, their collective labor fueling the rise and fall of entire empires. The terraced cliffs you see today are not natural formations, they are the cumulative scars of this endless extraction, a literal layering of human ambition across millennia. This was not just a mine, it was a vast, open-air factory that permanently rewrote the local ecology. The true, haunting legacy of Rio Tinto flows through its water. As miners exposed fresh rock to air and water, a chemical reaction created a highly acidic runoff, laced with dissolved iron and heavy metals. This runoff seeped into the local rivers, staining them a deep, bloody red and creating an environment so toxic that almost nothing can live in its waters today. The very process that yielded precious metals also poisoned the land for centuries, a stark and early example of industrial-scale environmental change. Yet, from this ecological devastation emerged brilliant innovation. The miners of Rio Tinto became masters of their dark craft, developing advanced smelting techniques to separate pure metal from complex ores. This specialized knowledge traveled along ancient trade routes, spreading across the Mediterranean and profoundly influencing metallurgical practices worldwide. The very tools and weapons that built classical civilizations were, in many ways, forged with knowledge born from these Spanish hills. The mines dictated the rhythm of human life for miles around. Settlements boomed into bustling towns, only to be abandoned when a particular vein of ore was exhausted, their populations moving on to the next promise of wealth. This cycle of boom and bust shaped regional economies and migration patterns for thousands of years, creating a human landscape entirely dependent on the riches pulled from the ground. Now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Rio Tinto is studied as much for its historical significance as for its profound ecological impact. It forces us to confront an urgent, modern question. How do we balance our undeniable need for resources with the long-term health of our planet? The Red Rivers of Spain are a powerful cautionary tale, urging us to look at our own mining projects and ask what lasting mark they will leave. Is our technological progress today any more sustainable than the endeavors of the Romans, or are we simply creating larger, more complex versions of the same ancient problem? This deep reflection on extraction leads us to a project of a very different nature, where the goal was not to take from the earth, but to shape it into a monument of pure devotion, a temple complex carved from a single living rock. From the toxic rivers of industry, we arrive at a monument of pure subtraction. The Kailasa temple is not a building that was constructed, but a mountain that was unmade. In the heart of a basalt cliff in India, an army of sculptors began a project that seems to defy physics itself. They did not build upwards, but carved downwards from the top of the rock to the ground, removing over 200,000 tons of solid stone to reveal a freestanding temple complex dedicated to Lord Shiva. Every pillar, every statue, every courtyard was already hidden within that mountain, waiting to be discovered by the patient chisel. This top-down approach meant they worked without any scaffolding, their vision fixed on the form emerging from the living rock, a single mistake capable of ruining the entire endeavor. The result is a structure that feels both impossibly ancient and eternally new, as if it had been grown from the earth rather than built upon it. The temple's design reveals a profound understanding of the cosmos. Its main shrine is aligned with the path of the sun, so that during the equinoxes, sunlight pours directly into the inner sanctum, illuminating the sacred Shiva lingam. This was not just architecture, it was a celestial clock, a device to harmonize human worship with the rhythms of the universe. The complex extends beyond the main temple to include intricate subsidiary shrines, meditation halls, and even a system to channel rainwater, creating reflecting pools that would have doubled the temple's majesty in their serene surfaces. It was a self-contained world of faith. Remarkably, while many of the surrounding cave temples at Ellora have suffered from erosion, Kailasa remains in a stunning state of preservation. Its sheer mass and the genius of its drainage systems have protected it from the monsoon rains that have worn away softer stone elsewhere. It stands as the pinnacle of rock-cut architecture, a testament to a civilization that viewed the act of creation as an act of revelation. The sheer devotion required for such a project is staggering. What force compels people to spend generations on a task with such immense risk and no tangible reward? It mirrors the drive behind the great cathedrals of Europe, where communities invested centuries into a single, glorious expression of their belief. These projects were not just about creating a space for worship, they were about making faith visible, tangible, and permanent. The Kailasa Temple challenges our modern, efficiency-driven mindset, asking us what we would be willing to build if our only compensation was the legacy itself. This incredible network of devotion carved from a single cliff finds a strange parallel in a different kind of network, one made of earth and ambition that sought to bind a continent together. That same principle of connectivity was woven into the very spine of the Andes Mountains. The Incan road system, the Quhapac-Ñan, was more than a collection of paths. It was a 40,000-kilometer-long administrative nerve, binding a sprawling empire of mountains and coasts into a single, responsive organism. Unlike the straight, rigid roads of the Romans, These routes were masters of adaptation, flowing over some of the most extreme terrain on Earth. They scaled vertiginous cliff faces with stone staircases, crossed raging rivers on braided fiber suspension bridges, and traversed scorching deserts with perfectly aligned stone-paved causeways. This was not a network imposed upon the landscape, but one that conversed with it, a testament to an engineering philosophy that prized harmony over domination. The lifeblood of this system was its messengers, the chasquis. These highly trained runners operated in relay, stationed in small posts just a few kilometers apart. A message or a fresh piece of seafood for the emperor could travel hundreds of kilometers in a matter of days, a speed unmatched until the invention of the telegraph. They carried the empire's data not on paper, but on quipus, intricate sets of knotted cords that recorded everything from census data and tax records to historical narratives. This was a binary code written in string, a sophisticated information technology that kept the empire's vast knowledge flowing. To support this constant movement, the Incas built way stations known as tambos at strategic intervals. These were not mere shelters, but bustling hubs offering food, supplies, and a place to rest for imperial officials, moving armies, and long-distance pilgrims. The presence of the tambo transformed an arduous, potentially deadly journey through the high-altitude puna or the dense cloud forest into a manageable undertaking. This infrastructure of care was a key element of imperial control, a tangible demonstration of the state's power to provide and protect. The construction of the Quhapak Nyan was a monumental act of social organization. Labor was drawn from local communities as a form of tax, a system known as mita. This meant that the very people who used the roads also helped build and maintain them, weaving their own labor into the fabric of the empire and fostering a shared sense of identity and purpose. The roads became a physical manifestation of a social contract, connecting diverse ethnic groups into the larger idea of Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters. With the Spanish conquest, this intricate system began to unravel. The new rulers, focused on extracting silver and shipping it by sea, had little use for a high-altitude pedestrian network. Many bridges rotted away, staircases were buried by landslides, and knowledge of remote sections faded into legend. Yet the Quhapak Nyan never fully died. To this day, indigenous communities continue to use and maintain stretches of these ancient paths, a living heritage that has outlasted the empire that built it. This enduring legacy forces us to reconsider our own infrastructure. In a world of fragile supply chains and climate disruption, what can we learn from a transportation system designed for resilience and integration, not just speed? The Quhapak Nyan teaches us that the most enduring connections are those that serve the people who live along them, transforming geography into a web of shared humanity. This mastery over water and land finds a stunning parallel in a city where the streets were not made of stone, but of liquid light. Rising from the turquoise waters of the Pacific is a city that seems to float, a labyrinth of stone built not on solid ground, but upon the living coral of a reef. Madol, a collection of 92 artificial islets off the coast of Pohnpei, is a marvel of ancient ambition. Its foundations are colossal basalt logs, some weighing up to 50 tons, meticulously stacked like lumber to create stable platforms above the water. The sheer effort of this construction is staggering to contemplate. Workers had to quarry these prismatic stones from the opposite side of the island, then transport them across miles of open ocean on rafts, navigating complex currents and tides. They were not just moving rock, they were mastering the sea itself to create their own land. This intricate web of canals and islets formed the ceremonial and political heart of the Sordelor dynasty, a place of immense spiritual power where priests and rulers lived separated from the common people. The city's layout was a deliberate echo of this social order, with specific islets designated for rituals, for canoe building, and even for the preparation of feasts. The entire complex functioned as a single, cohesive machine of governance and faith, all suspended over the water. But Madol was more than just a spiritual center. It was a feat of environmental engineering. The massive outer walls acted as breakwaters, dissipating the energy of typhoons before they could ravage the inner canals. The network of waterways was not just for transportation. It served as a natural cooling system and managed tidal flow, protecting the delicate structures from erosion. This was a city designed in harmony with the ocean's moods, not in defiance of them. For centuries, it thrived as the undisputed center of power. Then, around the 17th century, it was abandoned. The reasons remain shrouded in the mists of time, but local legend speaks of a powerful curse brought by a foreign challenger, a supernatural retribution for the tyranny of its rulers. The more likely causes are ecological and social. The immense strain of feeding the elite may have exhausted local resources, or a rebellion against the centralized, oppressive rule of the Sodeleurs. Its sudden silence left behind a ghost city, its canals slowly silting up and its stone platforms reclaimed by the jungle. The haunting beauty of Madol forces a difficult question. How does a civilization that achieved such mastery over its environment simply vanish? Its isolation was both its strength and its ultimate weakness, creating a powerful, insular culture that lacked the resilience of a connected mainland society. This aquatic metropolis stands as a poignant lesson in the fragile balance between human ambition and the resources that sustain it. From this city born of the sea, we journey to a desert where human ingenuity created an oasis from nothing. Where water was a fleeting gift, the Sabaean kingdom engineered an empire. In the arid expanse of ancient Yemen, the Marib Dam stood for more than 1,000 years as a testament to human foresight, a colossal wall of earth and stone that tamed the violent, seasonal floods of the Wadi Dana. This was not a dam meant to create a permanent lake, but a sophisticated harvesting machine. It captured the precious, short-lived torrents from mountain rains, holding the water back just long enough to channel it through a network of sluice gates and canals into a vast, man-made oasis. The desert floor, nourished by this engineered bounty, blossomed into a green belt of lush farmlands, supporting a population large enough to build the legendary wealth of the Sabaeans, the masters of the frankincense and myrrh trade. The true genius of Marib was not just in its construction, but in its governance. An intricate system of distribution channels allocated water with meticulous fairness to different communities and farms downstream. This was a social contract written in water flow, a recognition that the entire civilization depended on equitable sharing. Disputes were settled, quotas were enforced, and for centuries, this cooperative management ensured the dam was more than a piece of infrastructure. It was the very heartbeat of the kingdom. The dam's long history is a chronicle of continuous care. Archaeologists have found evidence of repeated repairs and significant upgrades over its lifetime, a clear sign of a society deeply invested in maintaining its lifeline. Each generation understood that their survival depended on the vigilance of the last, a chain of responsibility stretching across a millennium, but all chains eventually break. The very water that gave life also carried the seeds of the dam's destruction. Over the centuries, silt washed down from the mountains gradually accumulated behind the Great Wall, slowly reducing its capacity to hold water. This was a slow, creeping threat, one that required constant dredging and management. Historians believe that a combination of political instability and a loss of the communal spirit that had long sustained the system led to a critical failure of maintenance. When a final, catastrophic breach occurred, the event was so devastating it is recorded in the Quran, a marker of its world-altering impact. The life-giving waters vanished, the farms turned to dust, and the great population centers were abandoned as people migrated en masse, scattering the Sabaean civilization to the winds. The fall of Marib is a hauntingly relevant parable. It asks us how our own massive dam projects in arid regions will fare not in a decade, but in 1,000 years. Are we building with the same long-term vision, and just as crucially, have we woven the social fabric necessary to sustain them? The dam did not fail because of a single storm, but from the gradual erosion of the collective will that maintained it. Its ruins stand as a monument to a profound truth, that the most brilliant engineering is ultimately helpless without the enduring cohesion of the society it serves. This reflection on legacy and memory leads us from a lost dam to a city entirely dedicated to the afterlife, a necropolis of such scale it became a landscape for the dead. Deep within the sun-scorched cliffs of Thebes, an entire valley was dedicated not to the living but to the dead. The Valley of the Kings represents a breathtaking concentration of effort, where the might of the Egyptian Empire was channeled into creating eternal homes for its divine rulers. For nearly 500 years, from the 16th to the 11th century before the Common Era, this barren wadi echoed with the sounds of chisels as crews of skilled artisans carved dozens of elaborate tombs deep into the limestone heart of the mountain. This was not a single project with a single blueprint, but a sustained, generations-long enterprise fueled by a singular obsession, the perfect transition into the afterlife. Each tomb was a customized underworld palace, its walls covered in intricate paintings and hieroglyphs that served as a literal guidebook for the soul's perilous journey. Spells from the Book of the Dead were inscribed to protect the pharaoh from demons, while false doors were painted to confuse malevolent spirits and trap looters. The architects employed clever tricks like hidden pits and corridors that led to dead ends, all designed to safeguard the incredible wealth of gold, jewelry, and ritual objects buried within. The work itself was a state secret of the highest order. The artisans and laborers lived in a special village, Der el-Medina, isolated from the general population to prevent the tomb's locations from becoming common knowledge. They worked by the flickering light of oil lamps, inscribing scenes of the pharaoh standing before gods, his heart being weighed against a feather, and his eventual rebirth into a glorious new existence. This was a sacred, clandestine operation where every stroke of the brush was an act of both faith and state security. The choice of location was a masterpiece of practical and spiritual reasoning. The valley's geology was perfect, its limestone relatively easy to carve yet stable enough for deep excavations. Its remote, arid location offered natural protection from both the annual Nile floods and the ever-present threat of grave robbers. Yet, working so deep underground presented its own challenges. Engineers designed subtle ventilation shafts to control humidity and preserve the vibrant paint on the walls, a testament to their understanding of the delicate environment they were creating. The tombs were also precisely aligned with celestial bodies. The shaft in the tomb of Pharaoh Seti I, for example, points directly toward the center of the constellation we call Orion's Belt, which the Egyptians associated with the god Osiris, the lord of the afterlife. This was not mere decoration, it was a profound fusion of astronomy and theology, an attempt to anchor the pharaoh's soul to the eternal cycles of the cosmos. Despite all these precautions, most tombs were eventually looted, their treasures scattered. Yet, the discovery of the nearly intact tomb of Tutankhamun in the 1920s gave the world a staggering glimpse of the opulence that once lay within, revolutionizing our understanding of Egyptian art, religion, and daily life. These tombs, therefore, force us to confront a fundamental question about societal values. What does it say about a civilization that it would pour such a colossal portion of its resources, its finest artistic talent, and its most advanced engineering into a city for the dead? In our modern world, we build skyscrapers and data centers, monuments to commerce and information. The Egyptians built for eternity, their priorities firmly fixed on a horizon beyond mortal life. This immense expenditure speaks to a world view where the divine king's successful afterlife was essential for the continued prosperity of the entire nation. The Valley of the Kings is the ultimate landscape of legacy, a stark reminder that our greatest projects are often physical manifestations of our deepest beliefs about what lies beyond. From this silent city of tombs dedicated to the afterlife, we journey to a mountain meticulously sculpted to sustain the living, a terraced marvel that fed an entire empire. While the Egyptians were building tombs for eternity, another culture was carving a living, breathing landscape out of a mountain to sustain life itself. The Banaue rice terraces cascade across the Philippine Cordilleras like colossal green stairways to the sky, a sprawling network of hand-carved paddies that climb steep slopes at impossible angles. This is not the work of a single king or a centralized empire, but the cumulative labor of the Ifugao people, who for over 2,000 years patiently sculpted the mountainside with little more than wooden tools and their bare hands. Their goal was not a monument to a single ruler, but a permanent, sustainable source of food for their communities, a project so vast it is often called the eighth wonder of the world. The true genius of the terraces lies not in their visual grandeur, but in their invisible infrastructure. An intricate, gravity-fed irrigation system channels crystal-clear water from the mist-shrouded rainforests at the mountain peaks down to every single level of the terraces. This water is shared communally, with a sophisticated and equitable system governing its distribution to ensure every family's field receives exactly what it needs. It is a liquid democracy, a testament to a society that understood its survival depended on cooperation and shared responsibility for their most precious resource. This ancient design is a masterclass in environmental harmony. The terraces act as a giant sponge, preventing catastrophic erosion on the steep slopes and conserving water within the ecosystem. The Ifugao farmers cultivated a rich biodiversity within the paddies themselves, introducing specific fish and snails that not only provided additional food, but also helped control pests and fertilize the water. They planted native trees and shrubs along the edges to anchor the soil, a practice of integrated pest management and soil science that predates modern agroecology by centuries. This was not just farming, it was a profound dialogue with the mountain. Today, this living cultural landscape faces modern threats. Younger generations are migrating to cities, and the meticulous knowledge required to maintain the ancient stone walls and irrigation channels is at risk of fading. Climate change brings unpredictable rainfall, sometimes overwhelming the delicate water channels, other times leaving them parched. Yet, conservation efforts led by both the Ifugao communities and cultural organizations are fighting back, blending traditional techniques with new materials to reinforce the terraces for a new era. The endurance of Banaue forces a vital question upon our modern world, where industrial agriculture often depletes the very land it relies on. What can we learn from these 2,000-year-old paddies? They stand as a powerful reminder that the most successful mega-projects are not always those that conquer nature, but those that collaborate with it, creating a legacy that feeds generations not through force but through balance. This ancient model of sustainability carved into a mountain finds a stark contrast in our next destination, a fortress of pure commerce rising from the desert sands to guard the wealth of nations. High on a sheer-sided plateau in the Judean desert, a fortress was built not just for a king, but for his deepest fears. Masada was Herod the Great's masterpiece of paranoia, a palatial stronghold perched on an isolated rock mesa overlooking the Dead Sea. Its location was its primary defense, a natural citadel with cliffs rising 400 meters on every side, accessible only by a few narrow, treacherous paths. Here Herod, a ruler perpetually insecure about his power, engineered a sanctuary he believed was unconquerable. He fortified the already formidable summit with a massive casemate wall, a double wall with compartments that served as both barracks and storage, ringing the entire plateau. Within this defensive belt, he constructed not just military barracks, but two lavish palaces, complete with mosaic-floored reception halls and Roman-style bathhouses with sophisticated underfloor heating. The most breathtaking was the northern palace, built on 3 terraces that clung precariously to the cliff face, a statement of opulence and authority in the most inhospitable of places. Yet the true genius of Masada was not in its palaces, but in its plumbing. In a desert environment receiving barely a few centimeters of rain a year, the fortress supported a large garrison and royal court. Engineers designed an intricate system to capture the rare, violent flash floods that surged through the surrounding wadis. They built dams and channels to divert the precious water into a network of colossal cisterns carved deep into the mountain's rock, some capable of holding millions of liters. This foresight transformed the barren rock into a self-sufficient island, capable of withstanding a siege for years. Decades after Herod's death, this perfect refuge became the stage for one of history's most poignant dramas. After the fall of Jerusalem in the 1st century, a group of Jewish rebels known as the Sigiriya seized Masada, making it their final bastion against the Roman Empire. The Roman 10th Legion, tasked with crushing this last pocket of resistance, laid siege to the mountain. They established 8 fortified camps at its base and built a massive assault ramp of earth and timber up the western slope, a brutal, methodical project that stands to this day as a testament to Roman military persistence. According to the historian Josephus, when the Romans finally breached the walls, they found a silent citadel. The defenders, rather than be captured and enslaved, had chosen to take their own lives. This narrative of mass suicide, whether entirely accurate or partly legendary, forever fused Masada to the idea of ultimate resistance. It transformed from a monument to a king's fear into a symbol of a people's desperate fight for freedom. The site's excavation in the 1960s revealed the stark contrast of life there, from the rebels' simple, modified living quarters to the lingering luxury of Herod's palaces. This coexistence of utility and opulence on a remote desert rock forces a difficult question. What does it mean when a place designed as a selfish retreat becomes the last sanctuary for a collective ideal? Masada teaches us that the psychology of defense is as important as the architecture. The same walls that protected a tyrant's wealth later guarded the final embers of a rebellion, proving that a fortress is defined not by its stones, but by the spirit of those who hold it. Its story echoes through time, a permanent scar on the landscape, reminding us of the extreme lengths to which people will go to defend their liberty. This relentless human drive to extract and shape the earth leads us from a fortress of final defiance to a quarry that supplied the very stones of empire. The gray granite columns of the Pantheon in Rome stand with a quiet, imperial dignity, their strength sourced from a sun-scorched prison over 2,000 kilometers away. Mons Claudianus was not a city or a temple, but a factory carved into the desert mountains of Egypt, a remote quarry where the Roman Empire harvested stone for its most ambitious projects. Here, in the relentless eastern desert heat, a workforce of convicts and skilled stonemasons labored to extract perfect blocks of granodiorite, a stone prized for its durability and subtle, speckled beauty. Their task was to wrestle geology into geometry, cutting monolithic columns that would eventually grace the heart of the empire. The scale of individual stones is difficult to comprehend, with some columns measuring over 18 meters long and weighing more than 200 tons. How do you move a small mountain? The process began in the quarry itself, where workers used iron wedges and heavy stone hammers to fracture the granite along natural fissures. Once a block was freed, it was painstakingly shaped and polished before the real challenge began, the journey to the sea. Teams of oxen and laborers dragged these colossal weights on wooden sledges across the desert, following carefully prepared roads to the Nile. From there, they were loaded onto specially built barges for the river journey north, then transferred to massive cargo ships for the final, perilous voyage across the Mediterranean. This was a global supply chain operating 2,000 years ago, a testament to an organizational mind that could coordinate the extraction of raw material from a desolate quarry with its final installation in a temple hundreds of miles away. The true voice of Mons Claudianus, however, comes not from the stone but from the trash. Archaeologists have unearthed thousands of ostraca, broken pieces of pottery used as notepaper. These shards are the text messages of the ancient world, recording everything from work reports and equipment, requests to personal letters and complaints about rations. One worker writes home about a shipment of dates and fish sauce. Another requests a new pair of sandals. These fragments paint a vivid picture of a highly structured, almost militarized society operating in the middle of nowhere, a mix of forced labor and paid specialists all bound to the same colossal task. Then the work simply stopped. The quarry was abandoned, leaving behind a landscape frozen in time, half-finished columns still lying attached to the bedrock, tools scattered as if the workers had just stepped away for lunch. The empire's needs changed, or perhaps easier sources of stone were found, and this remote industrial outpost was left to the silence of the desert. This sudden departure forces us to look past the grandeur of Rome and ask who truly built it. The majestic columns we admire today rest on a foundation of brutal, unglamorous labor. What ethical questions does this raise about the cost of our own monuments? Our modern cities are built with steel from foundries and concrete from quarries, materials whose origins and human stories are often just as distant and hidden. Mons Claudianus reminds us that the beauty of an empire's surface often conceals a deep, complex, and sometimes painful reality underneath. This reflection on the human cost of grandeur finds a counterpoint in a city designed not for imperial power but for cosmic harmony. The silent avenues of Teotihuacan hold the ghost of a metropolis so powerful its true name is lost to us. We call it the City of the Gods, a title bestowed by the Aztecs who found its magnificent ruins centuries after its fall and believed only divine hands could have built it. At its heart stand the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, colossal structures that dominate the valley not as random monuments, but as fixed points in a grand celestial plan. The entire city was a map of the cosmos written in stone and earth. Its central spine, the Avenue of the Dead, runs for more than 2 kilometers, precisely aligned to point at the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on a key date in the Mesoamerican calendar. This was not merely a street, it was a processional highway for rituals that connected the earthly realm to the movements of the heavens. What is perhaps most staggering is that this urban marvel, which housed perhaps 200,000 people at its peak, was orchestrated by a society that left behind no known written language. There are no royal inscriptions, no lists of kings, no decrees carved into its walls. The city itself is its only text. Its grid layout, with standardized multi-family apartment compounds lining its streets, speaks of a highly organized collective society. These were not simple huts, but sprawling, one-story complexes built of stone and plaster, housing dozens of families around central courtyards. They were decorated with vibrant murals depicting gods, jaguars, and abstract spiritual concepts, a complex cosmology painted for all to see in their daily lives. The city functioned as a massive, multi-ethnic engine of innovation. Anthropologists studying isotopes in skeletal remains have found that a significant portion of its population migrated from different regions of Mesoamerica, drawn to this immense urban center. They brought with them their own artistic styles and technological knowledge, contributing to a cultural explosion evident in the city's distinctive pottery, obsidian tools, and architectural techniques. Teotihuacan became a melting pot, a precursor to the great global cities of today, thriving on the diversity and skills of its people. Then, around the middle of the 6th century, the engine stopped. The city was systematically and deliberately burned, its grand temples and civic buildings targeted in what appears to have been a violent, internal uprising. The exquisite murals were defaced, and the metropolis was abandoned. Was it a revolt against a ruling class that has left no physical throne? Was it a prolonged drought that shattered the social contract? The evidence points to a collapse from within, a fracturing of the very collective spirit that had built the city in the first place. Teotihuacan's silent fate poses an urgent question for our own sprawling urban centers. How does a society maintain its cohesion when it grows so large and complex? The city's genius was in its integrated design, where astronomy, architecture, and daily life were woven into a single fabric. Modern planners look to such ancient examples for lessons in creating walkable, spiritually resonant, and community-focused spaces. Teotihuacan challenges our deepest assumptions, proving that a society can achieve breathtaking sophistication without the records we traditionally rely on to define civilization. Its legacy is a reminder that a city is more than its buildings. It is a fragile agreement between people and the cosmos they seek to embody. This mastery of alignment and guidance, written across a vast city, finds a singular purpose in our next wonder, a tower of fire that became a legend. Its guiding beam was a star fixed firmly to the earth, a promise of safe harbor carved in fire and glass. The Lighthouse of Alexandria did not simply stand on the island of pharaohs. It dominated the horizon, a white marble titan rising to a height that would challenge a 40-story building today. This was not just a tower with a flame. It was a three-tiered masterpiece of structural engineering, a fortress of light designed to project Ptolemaic power and intellect across the entire Mediterranean basin. Its square base housed hundreds of workers and a spiraling ramp that allowed donkeys to carry fuel for the Great Fire all the way to the summit. The middle section was an octagon, and the top a graceful cylinder crowned with a statue of Poseidon, the sea god himself seemingly holding the light that tamed his own domain. The true miracle, however, was its optical system. Ancient accounts describe a massive, polished metal mirror, perhaps of bronze, capable of reflecting and focusing the light from a colossal furnace into a beam so intense it could be seen from an unimaginable 50 kilometers out to sea. By day, the mirror may have even been used to reflect sunlight, creating a brilliant daytime beacon. This was a feat of applied physics that would not be rivaled for over 1,000 years. For mariners navigating the treacherous reefs and shifting sandbars of the Egyptian coast, that steady glow was more than a light. It was a lifeline, the difference between a successful voyage and a watery grave. The lighthouse single-handedly made the port of Alexandria the safest and busiest in the ancient world, funneling the wealth of 3 continents through its docks. Its legendary resilience is a story in itself. It withstood the tremors of numerous earthquakes for over 1,500 years, a testament to the genius of its flexible design and the quality of its mortar, which was supposedly strengthened with molten lead to withstand the sea's relentless pounding. It became an enduring symbol of the city, so famous that the island's name, Pharos, became the root for the word lighthouse in languages from French to Spanish. Yet, even this titan of human ingenuity was not immortal. A series of powerful quakes between the 10th and 14th centuries finally sent the great tower crashing into the sea. Its fall was more than the loss of a building. It was the loss of the concentrated knowledge that built it, the sophisticated techniques of its mirror, and its earthquake-resistant design that would not be fully rediscovered until the Renaissance. The legacy of the lighthouse is woven into the very fabric of our language and technology. The word pharmacy, for instance, derives from the Greek word for remedy, which was also associated with the island of Pharos, a center for the trade and study of medicinal herbs. More profoundly, the principle of a tall, stable tower emitting a guided light to ensure safe passage is the direct ancestor of every modern lighthouse and navigational beacon that guides ships and planes today. Its destruction forces a humbling reflection. How many of our own guiding structures, our satellites and power grids, are just as vulnerable to the indifferent forces of nature? The Lighthouse of Alexandria stands as a permanent lesson in the interplay of brilliant innovation and profound impermanence, a reminder to cherish the beacons we build while we still can. From this fallen giant of light and sea, we turn to a very different kind of barrier, a wall of stone and fear that sought to divide a continent. Its northernmost frontier was a wall of earth and ambition built on shifting ground. The Antonine Wall sliced 63 kilometers across the narrow waste of Scotland, a turf rampart backed by a deep ditch and fronted by a series of formidable forts. This was the Roman Empire's final, aggressive push into the northern wilderness, a declaration that even this rugged, rain-lashed land was now Roman territory. Legions of soldiers, more accustomed to fighting with sword and spear, became laborers, cutting and stacking countless blocks of turf to form a barrier 4 meters high. They worked in a climate far removed from the Mediterranean sun, their progress dogged by cold rains and the constant threat of attack from the tribes they called the Picts, the Painted People. This wall was not just a military line, it was a comprehensive system of control. A military road ran behind it, allowing for the rapid deployment of troops, while a series of regularly spaced forts housed the garrisons that manned the frontier. From these strongholds, patrols could monitor movement and respond to incursions. Their watchful presence meant to demoralize the local tribes and regulate trade and contact. The artifacts left behind tell a story not just of conflict, but of strange coexistence. Archaeologists have unearthed Roman military insignia alongside locally made pottery, and Roman coins that were pierced to be worn as jewelry by the native people, evidence of a complex cultural exchange happening right at the edge of the sword. Yet, this massive undertaking was abandoned after only 2 decades. The legions pulled back to the stronger, more permanent stone of Hadrian's Wall to the south. The reasons were a brutal calculus of imperial overreach. Supplying these northern forts was a logistical nightmare. The local resistance was fierce and unrelenting, and the cost in men and materials simply became too great for the strategic gain. The empire had found its limit not in the courage of its legions, but in the harsh reality of geography and determined opposition. Once abandoned, the turf wall began its slow surrender to the elements. The ramparts softened, the ditches filled with silt, and the forest crept back to reclaim the land. Today, its grassy mounds are subtle ghosts in the Scottish landscape, visible only to those who know where to look. This fleeting frontier forces a difficult question about the walls we build today, both physical and political. Why do we invest so much in boundaries that are often more symbolic than secure? The Antonine Wall speaks to a deep-seated human desire to draw a line, to define an us and a them, even when nature and human spirit constantly work to erase that line. Its rapid decline is a lesson in the futility of imposing a border without the enduring will or power to hold it, a reminder that the most imposing barriers can become the most ephemeral. From this vanished line in the Scottish soil, we ascend to a boundary of a completely different kind, a garden built not to divide but to evoke a lost paradise. No physical trace of its legendary terraces has ever been found, yet the story of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon has captivated humanity for over 2,000 years. Ancient writers described a mountain of cultivated greenery built of mud, brick, and stone, a series of ascending terraces that created the illusion of a lush, floating garden suspended above the flat, sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia. According to legend, this marvel was the work of King Nebuchadnezzar II, a gift of love and engineering to comfort his wife, Amytis, who longed for the green, mountainous landscape of her homeland. It was a paradise constructed out of longing, a deliberate act of environmental manipulation to cure a personal heartache. The true genius of this supposed wonder would have been its hidden machinery. In a land with little rainfall, keeping such a garden alive would have required a hydrological miracle. Historians and engineers speculate that a system of chain pumps, a series of buckets on a rotating belt, or even the early Archimedes screw, could have been used to lift water from the Euphrates River to the very top of the structure. From there, a network of channels and reservoirs would have distributed the life-giving water down through each level, a constant, engineered rainfall sustaining a vibrant collection of trees, flowers, and aromatic shrubs. Yet, this beautiful story is shrouded in profound mystery. No Babylonian texts mention the gardens, and archaeological excavations at the site of ancient Babylon have failed to find any evidence of the complex foundations or water systems such a structure would demand. This absence has led some scholars to propose a stunning alternative, that the gardens were not in Babylon at all, but were built a few centuries earlier in the Assyrian capital of Nineveh by King Sennacherib. His own inscriptions boast of a vast garden watered by an elaborate system of canals and a great screw-powered lifting device, a description that matches the later Greek accounts of the Babylonian wonder almost perfectly. Whether the gardens were in Babylon or Nineveh, their legend took on a life of its own, becoming a powerful archetype. The image of a terraced, walled garden became the blueprint for the Persian concept of paradisa, which literally translates to a walled garden and gives us our word paradise. This ideal of an enclosed, perfected nature, a refuge from the harsh outside world, went on to influence Islamic garden design for centuries, with its emphasis on symmetry, water channels, and the creation of a serene, earthly heaven. The enduring power of this myth forces a compelling question. Why does an unverified garden remain one of the most famous wonders of the ancient world? It speaks to a universal human yearning, not just for beauty, but for mastery over our environment. The idea of creating a perfect, self-contained ecosystem, a green sanctuary in the heart of a desert, is a dream that continues to resonate. We see its direct descendants today in the ambitious concepts of vertical farming and living walls, where technology is again harnessed to make barren spaces bloom. The ultimate lesson of the Hanging Gardens may not be about their physical reality, but about the unstoppable power of an idea. They challenge us to consider how a story, repeated and embellished over generations, can become more powerful than stone and mortar, inspiring real-world innovation long after the original, if it ever existed, has crumbled to dust. This dream of connection across a divide leads us from a mythical garden to a very real and terrifying bridge. A temporary wooden giant once strode across the Danube, its feet planted in stone and its purpose etched in conquest. The Bridge of Trajan was a masterpiece of military pragmatism, a wooden superstructure stretching over 1,000 meters in length, supported by 20 massive stone piers. Its architect, Apollodorus of Damascus, faced a formidable challenge, taming a wide, powerful river to create a highway for invasion into the kingdom of Dacia, in what is now Romania. This was not a bridge meant to foster trade or connect communities for generations. It was a surgical instrument of war, built with the explicit goal of delivering Roman legions to the far shore. Its construction was a spectacle of engineering precision, employing techniques that would be admired for centuries. To build the stone piers in the fast-moving water, Roman engineers used cofferdams, which are temporary, watertight enclosures built around the construction site. They would drive wooden piles into the riverbed in a circle, then pump the water out from inside, creating a dry workspace in the middle of the river where they could lay the foundation stones. This allowed them to build the piers up from the solid riverbed, ensuring a stable base for the colossal wooden arches that would span the gaps between them. The segmented wooden arches themselves were a marvel of prefabrication. The components were likely crafted on the riverbank, then carefully assembled in place, a logistical puzzle solved with ropes, pulleys, and immense human labor. Historical accounts, including depictions on Trajan's column in Rome, show us the scale and complexity of this endeavor, a project that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in the ancient world. Yet the most telling part of the story is its ending. After Trajan's legions had secured their victory and Dacia was absorbed into the empire, the bridge was systematically dismantled. Its wooden superstructure was taken apart to prevent the very people they had just conquered from using it to launch a counter-invasion. The stone piers were left to the river, where they slowly succumbed to the current and were lost for over 1,000 years. This deliberate destruction forces a difficult ethical question. How do we weigh the brilliance of such engineering against its purely destructive purpose? This was a mega project designed not for legacy, but for obsolescence, a tool to be used and then broken so no one else could wield it. Its brief existence stands in stark contrast to the aqueducts and roads Rome built to last for centuries. It reminds us that human ambition can be channeled into creations of breathtaking ingenuity that serve the most transient of goals, the immediate needs of power and control. The ghost of Trajan's bridge lingers as a lesson in the morality of infrastructure, asking us to consider the ultimate purpose behind the landscapes we reshape. From this fleeting wonder of military necessity, we move to a city of the dead, carved not for conquest, but for eternity from the face of a rose-red cliff. The treasury's facade glows with the color of a desert rose, a tomb carved not just for a king, but for an entire civilization's ambition. Petra was more than a city. It was a monumental illusion, a secret capital hidden within the protective folds of Jordan's sandstone mountains. Its main entrance was a masterstroke of psychological theater, a narrow, winding canyon called the Sick that stretches for over a kilometer. Walking through this towering, shadowy cleft in the earth, with cliffs soaring 80 meters overhead, was a deliberate journey designed to build awe. The path twists and turns, building anticipation until, at the final bend, a sliver of the treasury's magnificent, pink carved facade is revealed, perfectly framed by the rock. This was a calculated display of power and wealth, meant to overwhelm any trader or diplomat arriving from the harsh desert. This grandeur was funded by the scent of luxury itself. The Nabateans were the undisputed masters of the Arabian incense trade, their camel caravans moving immense quantities of frankincense and myrrh across vast desert routes. The wealth from these precious goods allowed them to literally sculpt their capital from the living rock, blending artistic influences from the Greeks, Egyptians, and their own nomadic traditions into a unique architectural language. Beyond the famous treasury, the city unfolds with vast royal tombs, a Roman-style theater that could seat thousands, and grand temples, all hewn directly from the cliff faces. Yet their true genius lay not in what they carved, but in what they captured: water. In a land where rain was a rare and violent event, the Nabateans became hydrological wizards. They engineered the entire city to harvest every possible drop. They constructed dams to divert the destructive power of flash floods away from the sick and into a network of channels and cisterns. Hundreds of these reservoirs, large and small, were carved underground and lined with waterproof plaster, creating a reliable water supply that could sustain a population of perhaps 30,000 people. They turned a desert canyon into a man-made oasis, their survival dependent on this brilliant, invisible infrastructure. For centuries, Petra thrived as a cosmopolitan hub, its wealth and culture flowing as steadily as its managed water. But civilizations rise and fall with the tides of commerce. As Roman sea routes began to dominate the transport of goods, the slow, overland caravan trade that was Petra's lifeblood gradually dried up. The city's economic purpose vanished, and with it the resources and will to maintain its complex water systems. People drifted away, and the magnificent rock-cut buildings were left empty. Knowledge of the city faded from the Western world, preserved only in local Bedouin lore, until the Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt famously rediscovered it in 1812. Petra's silence poses a haunting question for our own time. How does a city of such profound beauty and engineering genius simply vanish from global memory? Its modern rediscovery brought it back into the light, but with that comes a new threat: the relentless footfall of tourism. The very act of loving such a place can slowly wear it away. This creates a modern paradox. How do we protect our most fragile heritage while still allowing people to experience its wonder? Petra stands as a permanent lesson in the impermanence of even the greatest human achievements, a rose-red city whose survival now depends on our collective vigilance. This human need for a sanctuary, for a place of retreat and reflection, leads us from a lost city of trade to a hidden mountain of quiet contemplation. 1,000 years of devotion echo silently within these painted caves. Carved into a sandstone cliff in the Gobi Desert, the Mogao Caves are a honeycomb of 492 temples, a spiritual oasis that blossomed along the ancient Silk Road. For 10 consecutive centuries, from the 4th to the 14th, this was a living center of faith and artistry. Monks, painters, and sculptors from across Asia converged here, working by the flickering light of oil lamps to transform rough caverns into resplendent Buddhist paradises. They covered every surface with vibrant murals depicting the life of the Buddha, celestial beings, and scenes from everyday life along the trade routes, creating a visual library of spiritual instruction that was both beautiful and accessible to pilgrims who could not read. The caves were not just for show, they were active sanctuaries for meditation and teaching, their very atmosphere designed to transport the visitor from the harsh desert outside into a realm of serene enlightenment. The true treasure of Mogao was its role as a time capsule. Within a sealed chamber, later known as the Library Cave, lay a forgotten hoard of over 50,000 manuscripts, scrolls, and paintings. This accidental archive had been walled up for nearly 1,000 years, preserving a stunning cross-section of Silk Road life. Among these texts was the Diamond Sutra, a Buddhist discourse printed from wooden blocks in the year 868. This single document holds the distinction of being the world's oldest dated printed book, a revolutionary technology that predated Gutenberg by centuries. Its discovery here underscores the cave's primary function, not as a static monument, but as a dynamic hub for the transmission of knowledge, art, and faith across continents. The artistic styles within the grottos tell a story of cultural fusion. As you move from the earliest caves to the later ones, you can see the distinct influences of Indian, Central Asian, and Chinese aesthetics blending and evolving, a visual record of how Buddhism adapted and grew as it traveled. This immense spiritual project faced its own existential threat not from armies but from the desert itself. Sandstorms relentlessly battered the cliff face, and moisture seeping through the rock threatened to dissolve the delicate paintings. For a time, it seemed the caves and their priceless art would be reclaimed by the sands. Modern conservationists have since become the new guardians of this legacy, meticulously stabilizing the cliffs, controlling the interior environment, and digitally scanning the artworks to ensure their survival for future generations. The preservation of Mogao forces a vital question upon us. In a world focused on physical infrastructure, what is the value of safeguarding intangible heritage, the stories, art, and beliefs that define a culture? These caves prove that the most profound alterations to our landscape are not always dams or roads, but the spiritual and cultural imprints we leave behind. They challenge us to consider what we are creating today that will, 1,000 years from now, speak so eloquently of our own humanity. This legacy of connection across water and faith finds its next chapter not in a desert oasis, but in a port that mastered the monsoon winds to unite entire ocean basins. Two sheltered harbors carved from the coastline formed the beating heart of a maritime empire. The port of Carthage was a masterpiece of intentional design, a dual complex featuring a circular inner harbor for the mighty navy and a larger rectangular basin for the endless flow of merchant ships. Its circular military dock was an architectural marvel, lined with boathouses built directly into the perimeter, each capable of sheltering a warship. Above these boathouses rose a second level of columns, creating a covered walkway where admirals could observe the entire fleet without being seen, a command center of unparalleled efficiency. This was not a random anchorage, but a machine for projecting power across the entire Mediterranean. The flow of goods through the commercial port was the empire's lifeblood. Vessels arrived laden with tin from Britain, spices from India, and ivory from Africa, their cargoes stored in vast warehouses that line the quays. This constant circulation of wealth funded a civilization that stood as Rome's only true rival for centuries. The entire system was engineered for permanence. The Carthaginians faced the same problem that plagues every port: the slow, relentless accumulation of silt that can choke a harbor. Their brilliant solution was a system of sluice gates and channels that used the natural flow of water to scour the basins clean, a sustainable innovation that kept their maritime heart pumping for generations. This engineering prowess translated directly into military might. During the Punic Wars, the ability to quickly build, repair, and deploy hundreds of warships from this protected citadel gave Carthage a formidable advantage. It was a floating fortress, a strategic asset that allowed them to dominate sea lanes and challenge Rome's expansion for decades. Yet this entire complex, this pinnacle of naval architecture, was utterly obliterated. After the final Punic War, the Romans were so intent on erasing their rival that they systematically destroyed the city, sowed the fields with salt, and buried the magnificent ports under rubble and earth. For centuries, the harbor that once commanded the Mediterranean lay forgotten beneath farmers' fields. its scale only revealed by modern excavation. The fall of the port of Carthage forces a stark question about our own coastal megastructures. How many of our great port cities, our centers of global trade, are built on foundations just as vulnerable to rising seas and shifting political tides? Its story is a powerful lesson in the fragility of maritime dominance, proving that even the most advanced engineering is no shield against the determined wrath of a conqueror. This same drive to build for eternity, but on a far more ancient scale, takes us next to a pyramid that casts a long shadow from a time before the pharaohs. Before even the wheel was common in the Americas, a society was moving mountains of earth. The Pyramid of the Sun at Caral rises from the arid Supe Valley in Peru, a colossal earthen mound faced with stone that predates the Inca by over 4,000 years. This was the heart of the Norte Chico civilization, a complex of pyramids, sunken plazas, and residential districts that flourished in complete isolation from the Old World. At the very same time, the Great Pyramids were being erected in Giza. What makes Caral so revolutionary is not its scale alone, but the society that built it. Archaeologists have found no fortifications, no storehouses for weapons, and no depictions of captured warriors. Instead, the evidence points to a society organized around trade, religion, and a surprising degree of social cooperation. This was a civilization that chose to build monuments of collective faith rather than citadels of defense. They achieved this without pottery or visual art as we know it, their cultural expression channeled into architecture and sound. The ceremonial plazas were designed with remarkable acoustic properties, where a person speaking or playing a flute in the center could be heard clearly throughout the entire arena. This suggests community-wide musical rituals, a shared experience that used sound waves to physically bind people together in a common spiritual practice. The construction itself was a feat of communal labor. Workers organized vast teams to carry stones from nearby quarries and millions of woven shikra bags filled with rubble to form the pyramid's core. This was a pre-ceramic society marshalling its people not under the threat of a whip, but likely through shared belief and the social benefits of participation. Then, around 2,000 years before the Common Era, the city was peacefully abandoned. The people seemed to have simply walked away, leaving their pyramids to the wind and rain. The Supe Valley slowly reverted to farmland, and the memory of this early metropolis faded into the landscape itself. The silent, enduring mystery of Caral forces a profound question. What does it reveal about the many possible paths to civilization? We are so accustomed to narratives of history driven by conquest and kings that a society built on apparent cooperation and peaceful trade seems almost unbelievable. Its legacy invites us to reconsider our own assumptions about power and progress. Could the most enduring alterations to our planet be those born from harmony rather than conflict? This ancient model of urban life, rising in harmony from the Peruvian desert, finds a stunning contrast in a city that chose a completely different relationship with its environment, building not on solid ground, but on the shifting surface of a vast lake. Its temples and markets rose directly from the surface of a great lake. Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, was not built beside the water, but within it, an intricate metropolis of canals, causeways, and astonishingly productive floating gardens known as chinampas. Founded on an island in Lake Texcoco, the city was a marvel of adaptive engineering, home to perhaps 200,000 people at its peak. The Aztecs did not see their watery environment as an obstacle, but as their greatest resource. They transformed the shallow lake bed into a lattice of fertile farmland by weaving together reeds and stakes, then piling them with mud and nutrient-rich sediment from the lake bottom. These chinampas were not truly floating, but long, anchored rectangular plots, separated by canals that allowed canoes to pass between them. This created a perpetually moist, incredibly rich soil that could yield up to 7 harvests a year, turning a limited land base into an agricultural powerhouse that sustained an immense urban population. The city itself was laid out in a grid, but this was more than mere practicality. Its 4 main districts were aligned with the cardinal directions, reflecting the Aztec cosmos and mirroring their belief in a universe divided into 4 quarters. At the absolute center stood the Templo Mayor, the great twin pyramid complex dedicated to the gods of rain and war. From this sacred axis, 3 broad causeways stretched to the mainland, each equipped with bridges that could be removed for defense. These stone roads were not just transportation links, they were the city's lifelines, bustling with traders, soldiers, and pilgrims. Meanwhile, a massive dike, stretching over 15 kilometers, was constructed to hold back the brackish waters of the eastern lake, protecting the chinampas and the city's fresh water supply. An aqueduct built from twin terracotta pipes carried fresh spring water from Chapultepec Hill, ensuring a clean supply for the city's fountains and public spaces. This was a complete, self-regulating urban ecosystem. Then came the cataclysm. The Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés, laid siege to the city in 1521. They breached the aqueduct, blockaded the causeways, and waged a brutal war of attrition against a population whose world was literally built on water. The final destruction was total. The Spanish tore down the temples and palaces, using the rubble to fill in the canals and chinampas, systematically erasing the aquatic city and paving over it to build what would become Mexico City. This act was more than a military victory, it was a hydrological catastrophe. By draining the lake, they destroyed a natural flood buffer. Today, Mexico City, built on the clay of the former lakebed, is sinking, suffering from both a critical water shortage and catastrophic flooding during heavy rains, a direct legacy of that fateful decision. The story of Tenochtitlan forces us to ask a difficult question. How much profound wisdom about living in balance with our environment have we lost through conquest and disregard? The city stands as a powerful symbol of resilience and a tragic lesson in the long-term consequences of disrupting ancient ecological systems. Its sophisticated integration of urban life, agriculture, and water management offers a timeless blueprint for sustainable development, urging us to look to indigenous knowledge for solutions to our own modern crises of water and urban sprawl. This legacy of a kingdom forged in unity now leads us to a final resting place that aimed to do the same, a tomb designed to bind a people together for eternity. Its gleaming white marble and sculpted heroes made a tomb into a city of art. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus was not built for a god or a pharaoh, but for a man, a regional governor named Mausolus, who dreamed of a legacy that would outshine kings. His final resting place was so staggering in its beauty and scale that it earned a place among the original 7 wonders of the ancient world, and its name became the very word we use for any grand tomb. This was a personal monument that deliberately blurred the lines between cultures, fusing the graceful columns of Greek temples with the steep, pyramidal roof of Anatolian steppe monuments. It was a declaration that in the newly interconnected Hellenistic world, power and identity could be a hybrid creation. The ruler gathered the most celebrated sculptors of the age, men like Scopas and Liachares, and set them to work in a kind of artistic competition. Each master was assigned a different side of the massive structure to decorate, resulting in a continuous frieze of breathtaking dynamism. One side might depict a mythical Amazonomachy, a battle between Greeks and Amazons, carved with such ferocious energy that the stone seemed to move, while another showed a serene procession of chariots and deities. This was not a single artist's vision, but a curated gallery of the finest talent, all focused on immortalizing one man. For centuries, the mausoleum stood as a landmark for sailors in the eastern Aegean, a white beacon of human ambition. Its endurance was a testament to its construction, surviving longer than many of the other ancient wonders. But even this symbol of permanence was not immune to time's slow erosion. A series of earthquakes eventually brought the towering structure down, scattering its statues and friezes. Then, in the 15th century, the Knights of St. John arrived, finding a city built upon the ruins. They quarried the marble rubble, burning the exquisite reliefs in their kilns to produce lime for their own fortress walls. The very stones meant to eternalize a man were ground down to mortar, a stark and literal recycling of legacy. Yet, the idea of the mausoleum proved more durable than its physical form. Its architectural DNA spread, influencing the design of grand tombs from Roman imperial mausoleums to the grand memorials of the Renaissance. It established a blueprint for how a society could commemorate its great individuals, setting a standard for funerary art that echoed for millennia. This raises a poignant question about our own time. Why do we, as a global society, continue to be captivated by these monuments to individual lives, from the Taj Mahal to the pyramids of Giza? They speak to a universal human desire to be remembered, to leave a mark that defies the anonymity of death. The mausoleum challenges the modern notion that mega-projects must serve a purely public, utilitarian purpose. It reminds us that the drive for personal glory, when channeled through art and architecture, can produce a wonder that becomes a collective inheritance for all of humanity. Its story brings our journey to a close, leaving us to ponder the invisible threads that connect these 25 forgotten landscapes of ambition. These echoes of the past resonate with a startling urgency in our own time. The same colossal ambition that carved mountains and rerouted rivers now builds silicon cities in deserts and launches networks into the sky. We are the latest chapter in this ancient story, facing our own existential pressures with projects of a scale that would have been unimaginable to the engineers of the Kanatferon or the planners of Teotihuacan. Our modern equivalents, from continent-spanning fiber optic cables to proposed geoengineering schemes to cool the planet, are the new mega-projects, driven by that familiar mix of necessity, faith in technology, and the pursuit of power. The fundamental questions, however, remain unchanged. How do we balance our need for connection with the environmental cost of our infrastructure? Can we build with the long-term wisdom of the Banaue terraces, or are we repeating the short-sighted extraction of Rio Tinto on a global scale? The silent warning of the Marib Dam is particularly haunting, reminding us that even the most brilliant system is fragile, dependent on a social contract and a collective will to maintain it. Our current challenges with aging dams, strained power grids, and plastic-choked oceans suggest we have not yet fully learned this lesson. These forgotten wonders compel us to look at our own blueprints with a deeper, more critical eye. They ask us to consider not just what we can build, but what we should build and for whose benefit. The legacy of these 25 projects is a mirror, reflecting both our limitless potential for creation and our profound capacity for unintended consequences. As we stand at the threshold of a future we are actively shaping, their collective voice offers a single, guiding question. Will our greatest monuments be those that serve only our present, or will they be those that honor the planet and its people for generations yet to come? The answer is still being written, not in stone, but in the choices we make every day. These silent landscapes of ambition whisper a timeless lesson across the centuries. Our journey through 25 forgotten mega-projects uncovers a profound truth. that our human drive to build the impossible has permanently reshaped the planet, leaving behind stories of triumph, folly, and incredible resilience etched into stone and soil. The guiding beam of the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the life-giving steps of the Banaue Terraces each reveal a different facet of this eternal struggle, a delicate balance between raw ambition and the profound responsibility that comes with it. These are not just ruins, they are mirrors reflecting our own potential and our own vulnerabilities. As we confront modern challenges like climate change and rapid urbanization, these historical echoes become urgent guides. They urge us to build with foresight, to learn not only from the ingenious water systems of Petra, but also from the environmental toll of Rio Tinto. Their legacies ask us to consider the long-term impact of our own creations, to build for a future we may never see, but that our descendants will inherit. Let these stories inspire you to look closer at the world around you, to discover the hidden wonders in your own landscape, and perhaps to contribute to projects that will shape a positive and sustainable future. We would love to hear which of these mega projects amazed you the most, so share your thoughts in the comments below. For more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries, be sure to subscribe. The landscapes we walk today are a testament to those who came before us. Let us strive to ensure our own marks upon the earth are worthy of remembrance.